everybody. Good day to what is the third to last day, or maybe, whoopsie. Are you okay? Or the second to last day here at COP19. And we are all waiting with bated breath of what the ministerial consultations and the consultations of the presidency are going to do and putting us forward. So welcome very much here to the pavilion at COP29 in Baku, hosted by CLOP, the Global Legislators Organization. And we are here for an event that we have called How to Make Polluters Pay for Adaptation and Loss and Damage, a parliamentary review. And it's really, really important to actually reflect not only the perspectives, but also the accountability that parliamentarians have, the strengths and power that parliamentarians have in actually holding not only their own government to account, because they also usually have the power of the purse in pushing governments to make sure that funding happens. And this is particularly important as we are looking at what is a horribly underfunding situation globally for adaptation and for addressing loss and damage. In particular, since the money that is forthcoming is also of poor quality, too much is still delivered in loans for countries that are suffering the worst impact of the climate crisis, including escalating losses and damages, but have contributed very little to greenhouse gas emission, like, for example, small island developing states. And we are very grateful that we have a parliamentary representatives from the Pacific here to highlight that. I would also be amiss, and I actually already failed, both to introduce myself, but also to introduce the co-organizers of the event. My name is Liane Schalatek. I'm with the Heinrich Böll Foundation, the Washington, D.C. office. I follow climate finance, and I'm extremely pleased that the Heinrich Böll Foundation is co-hosting this event together with the office of Member of Parliament Katrin Henneberger from the German Greens, but also with German Watch and Danish Church Aid. So a wonderful initiative to bring us all together. Coming back to finance, we know that this COP has been called the Finance COP. We know the discussion about a new quantified collective finance goal is going to be the big issue. And not only the quantity of the funding, but also the quality. But a big question is in particularly whether we see any reflection, and in what form, of funding to address loss and damage. Civil society and developing countries have strongly pushed to actually have a sub-goal for addressing loss and damage, and this in particular to address again the structural underfunding or non-recognition for funding to address loss and damage in the current climate finance regime. And we are obviously hoping that quite a bit should be channeled and could be channeled through what was the big success of COP28, namely the adoption and subsequent starting of the operationalization of a new fund for responding to loss and damage. And this is very important because that fund is under the UNFCCC and under the Paris Agreement as an operating entity of the financial mechanism. That means it's bound by and should follow the principles of both agreements, and that means particularly also in line with equity and CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. And so it's very clear that developed countries and polluters should pay to make sure that that fund is sufficiently capitalized. However, at the moment, we only have initial funding pledges being made, which is far from a sufficient capitalization that would be needed, because we know that actually the damages, losses and damages already occurring are in hundreds of billions, and this is expected to grow. But the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage has only received cumulative pledges since the decision of last year in Dubai of 752 million. And that includes a couple of the last pledges. We would have wished for more that have been forthcoming so far here at COP29, namely a pledge by Sweden, a pledge by New Zealand, and a pledge by Australia. And again, while we are very happy that those countries have pledged, we also would say you can do more, because most of the funding amounts that countries have put forward are very small and pitiful. And now to take a look at what possibilities there are to actually get more funding, and particularly also more publicly generated funding, I want to turn it over to Vera Künzel from German Watch, who will give us a short presentation of what options there are for actually generating more funding.
Thank you very much, Liane, and also welcome from my side. It's super nice to see all of you here, and yeah, I'm happy to be at the side event because I think it's really important, and Liane already elaborated on the big challenges we're facing at the moment in terms of adaptation and loss and damage finance, and we wanted to shed a bit more light on what are possible options to generate more public finance that could then be used for loss and damage and adaptation finance, hopefully. I will start just with a short overview of the many options that are under debate. This is from Oil Change International. If you want to look into more detail, I will just go through it just to give you an overview of what is under discussion, and then we'll go a bit into detail for two of the options. So we have, for example, very logical to stop funding fossils. That is, of course, one of the options that would also generate a lot of money. We would have the option, of course, or the measure to make polluters pay, for example, through a climate damages tax on fossil fuels. You can look at the row in the middle. It shows the amount that could be leveraged just in terms of the Global North and Annex II countries, which is quite a lot of money that could come through those measures. Then, of course, taxes on aviation and maritime shipping. I will really just go through it to just give you an overview. Savings from avoidable highway and road expansion, a minimum corporate tax rate, increase of wealth taxes, for example, for multimillionaires and billionaires. We will look into that a bit more in detail later. Cracking down on tax evasion, financial transaction tax, also things that have already been tested and implemented. And then taxes on annual sales of big technology, arms, luxury fashion companies, redistributing public military spending, new issuances and redistribution of special drawing rights. That's also something that is very much discussed. And of course also cancelling debts for low and lower middle income countries. And then to look into detail a bit, for example, in a wealth or a billionaire's tax, because that is quite has been currently discussed, and then also has been very important in the G20 negotiations that just took place, or the G20 summit that just took place. But looking into it, that taxing the ultra wealthy is really an opportunity to advance tax justice, reduce carbon emissions, and have then funding for essential climate actions. There is a proposal by Gabriel Zucman of a minimum tax for billionaires. The baseline would be 2% of their wealth annually. And it would apply to the value of all assets owned by those billionaires, minus any debts. And it could also, it's also an option to include millionaires, so individuals with a wealth starting at $100 million US. And a tax like that could generate an annual 200 to 250 billion US dollars globally from only 3,000 individuals, which is really insane from my perspective. And if you would extend this tax to centimillionaires, it could also generate an additional 100 to 140 billion a year, US dollars, of course. And then it would be, of course, super important to collaborate between between different countries when implementing this kind of tax. So to have flexibility in application in the different countries, but of course reducing the opportunities for tax avoidance at the same time. And then, as I mentioned already in the beginning, in the now 2024 G20 declaration, this tax is also it's in the text of the declaration, and I just read you the beginning of that para. It is, with full respect to tax sovereignty of countries, of course, we will seek as the G20 to engage cooperatively to ensure that ultra-high net worth individuals are effectively taxed. So we really hope for an ambitious implementation of this goal. And then another option would be an aviation levy, and that is also interesting because there are, of course, also examples where that has been implemented already. And it is interesting because aviation is one of the most carbon-intensive industries or sectors with higher flight classes, also having a higher footprint per capita. A blind spot are private jets, which is also quite ridiculous. But in taxation, that is, despite the most polluting mode of travel per capita is traveling by private jets, and they remain exempt from taxation so far. Carbon emissions for private jets are 5 to 14 times more carbon intensive than commercial flights. And what is important if you plan to implement such kind of a levy, it is important to avoid that there's a flat rate tax, and that you have a levy or a tax, especially for business or first class travelers, because the carbon footprint is just much higher, and also the opportunities for people to pay more is there. That are also higher, of course. And there's an example also of a successful implementation, which is France's levy on air tickets, and also a good example of how those kind of instruments can channel revenues to support other areas, like it could be used for a loss and damage fund or the like. They channeled the revenues to support the fight against HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, and they did it in also trying to implement it in a just way, kind of. So €1 per economy ticket and 40 per business ticket has been added to the normal ticket price, and that generated quite an amount of money, and it has only been France implementing it in that way. So I think there is a lot of room for improvement and for options. And we're really interested in how you see it, what kind of ideas you have, and what options you see for your parliaments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vera. I think what is very important from the presentation is the takeaway that public funding could be made available and could be generated in the Annex 2 in the developed countries. And a lot of it is already generated, just not necessarily for the right purpose. And I just want to point out, and Vera didn't mention it, but if you scroll down basically the long list of proposals that Oil Change International have put together for what taxation is possible, the price tag, the annual price tag of what could be feasible, if you added up all those various tax elements, is actually 5 trillion per year. And so not incidentally, 5 trillion has been asked by global civil society here in connection with generating and focusing the NCQG on a public core provision goal because of equity, because of CBDR, but also by highlighting that money can be generated and generated in a way that is, for example, when you're talking about taxation that is progressive, takes no incident into account, like, for example, in a shipping levy, as this is, of course, of particular interest to the region like the Pacific and other small island developing states. So with that, I would want to give it over to our parliamentarians. We are so excited to have them here. And I would suggest that each of the ladies here, and how good to see that we have all ladies pushing for better public accountability here at the panel. I would say introduce yourself, please, briefly, and then also what are you currently working on, and just listening to Vera and the statement here and having had your own conversations here during the COP, what do you think are feasible ways of making polluters pay for finance? And I would start with our honored guests from the Pacific, the Honorable Lenora Kerry Tabua from Fiji, and I apologize. I know I butchered that horribly, but you can correct me by introducing yourself, please.
That's fine. I always say I've been called worse things. Nisambula Vinaka, warm greetings from the Pacific and in particular from Fiji. My name is Lenora Ngerengere Tambua. I am the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Fiji, and I'm also the Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. What we parliamentarians that are here at COP need to remember all the time, I think, is the fact that people have put us in the places we're in, and it is our responsibility to go home and to tell people what we've been here to do. So if I may just stop there and let the other two ladies introduce themselves before I carry on with my speaking points. Thank you.
Okay, then I can follow up. My name is Lena Schilling. I'm the youngest member of the European Parliament. I'm elected in Austria, and I was a former climate activist, and now I'm here the first time in my new role, which is very exciting, but at the same time I feel a lot of pressure of doing my best job here, and I'm very excited to this discussion because I think it's the main point for this climate conference.
So my name is Katrin Henneberger. I'm a member of the German Parliament, and there I'm in the Committee for Climate and Energy and also Development Cooperation. So my main topic also is climate finance and extractivism, because I'm myself from a coal mine region in Germany. So I feel there a lot of responsible to act truly in a climate just way.
Okay, well, if I may just go straight into my speaking points and just get straight to the point. I'm from Fiji. We have more than 300 islands spread over a vast part of the Blue Pacific. And when we talk about polluters, we, as you all know, we in the Pacific in particular, contribute a negligible amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Yet we are the first ones to pay for the activities of big polluters. So the polluter pays principle has been a key part of climate discussions for years, and in essence the polluter should bear the cost of managing its pollution to prevent damage to human health and the environment. Although it's a long-held principle, it has not been put into practice consistently or enforced at the national or international level. And many of the largest polluters continue to operate with little or no financial consequences to their bottom line for the damage that they cause. In many countries, especially for us in Fiji, developing countries, we've been left to bear the costs of climate adaptation and mitigation, despite, as I said, being the least responsible for global emissions. For us in the Pacific, the climate crisis is already affecting the lives and livelihoods of our people. Our people need the necessary support to adequately adapt to the impacts of the climate crisis. We need to use more innovative means to access this support. We need new, additional, and more grant-based funding. We cannot afford to keep putting debt, on our bottom line. The phasing out of fossil fuels and the removal of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, prioritization of renewable energy solutions, and the distribution, particularly from major emitters, must be part of a just, fair, and equitable transition. And I just want to take us back to Fiji. And I know there might be some raised eyebrows in this little room right now, but I'll tell you a little story about what we do in Fiji and why this really cuts to our heart. As I said, we as parliamentarians are here to represent our people. And for us in Fiji, it's those that suffer the greatest from losses and damage because of the climate crisis. And I just want to get you to take a moment to reflect on what that means, to be relocated. I hear the word relocation. And relocation for maybe landlocked countries is easy, or easier for you than it is for us. Because for us in Fiji and for us in the Pacific, where we come from, the islands that we live on are part of our very culture, our tradition, our stories, our heart. So it is a place where our history is rooted. It is a place where we have literally buried the umbilical cords of our children. And this is what we do in the Pacific, is when we have given birth and we take the umbilical cord when it drops off the baby, we plant it in the ground. So that for us it means that this will be always home for our child. And when our home is being inundated, where do our stories come from? Where do our children go? This is where we bury our parents. When you come to the Pacific, you'll see that there are graves right next to homes, because this is how we feel about the land on which we were born, on which we were bred, and in many cases for us in the Pacific, where we will eventually go to retire. So I plan to go and retire on my island, but in 50 years' time, the beach might be at our front door. So you cannot put a dollar value on these sorts of impacts for us in the islands. And historically, this is what our people have been going through. So what do we expect from polluters? First, a clear commitment and action to peak global greenhouse gases before 2025, in alignment with the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report on limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. We cannot be here renegotiating past COP decisions, and that for us in the Pacific is not negotiable. Second, the implementation of the COP decisions. For instance, in paragraph 28 of the GST decision, there are a couple of things that parties have committed to, such as tripling global renewable energy capacity and doubling the global average of the annual rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. However, this must be in addition to a commitment to fossil fuel phase out and does not replace those efforts. And third, as reiterated several times, Fiji and other Pacific SIDS have made it clear they, for an additional and actionable support package, including finance, technology transfer, and capacity building support, which is easily accessible to those of us who need it the most. This and international cooperation is critical to developing and enabling parties to decarbonize our pathways. For us, the fight against climate change is a fight for humanity. Our well-being and our very survival is at stake. We all have the right to live in a beautiful and peaceful environment, free from discrimination, from greed and self-centered interest. And we can only achieve this if we work out our differences. So I thank you very much for this opportunity and look forward to the future discussions.
Thank you very, very much. And I would just pass it on right away. If you want to go next, Lena, maybe?
I can, and I think like many people here, I'm really touched because it's so important that we realize we're not just talking about numbers. We're talking about the future, we're talking about livelihoods, and we're talking about it now and not in the future. And I think that's something that people often misunderstand, because we are not debating about something that will just happen in 50 years. The climate crisis is happening right now. And I think we have seen a lot of backtracking in the last years, and this year it's especially hurtful because I think we made promises and we have to keep it. So as a member of the European Parliament, I negotiated the resolution for the climate, for climate and also for this COP. And in this resolution we have many important points in there, like, and you mentioned it, we need grant-based finance. That's one of the most important things. When we're debating, we can't debate about loans right now for loss and damage, because the global north, we have a responsibility. We are the ones that are right now not just in the position, but we need to really promise it and keep it. And that's one thing. We broke so many promises in the past, and these are the promises we have to keep. And maybe some things, like you mentioned German Watch, this presentation, it's great. And I think we need to show it many people, because we're asking often for other ways to funding. And there are so many ways of taxation we should use. And it's also, I think, one thing that I'm a bit missing is, I think the easiest step we could do just right away and is just stop fossil subsidies. This would be like, maybe we can do it tomorrow, it would be great. It's something I asked Commissioner Högstra often about and also something we bring up. So that's something we are in solidarity there. And I will also try to ask in negotiations and the people that are negotiating for especially that, find other ways of taxation and funding, because the private sector is responsible. And what we are seeing is that the biggest oil companies just make profits that are 5 times higher, 4 to 5 times higher than the money we would need right now. So I think the main message right now is, and it's the main message from you, the money is there. And when we realize the money is there, and at the same time we need the money right now for not just loss and damage, but also adaptation and mitigation. And I think mitigation is something we really need to talk about, because otherwise loss and damage and adaptation will be much worse in about 10 years. So for these 3 chapters, I would say, we need just money. And I think that's something the European Union, and being here from the Parliament, we have to fight as hard as possible for it. But right now, and that's something I'm feeling deeply, I'm not very optimistic about. So we're seeing there is the money, there is the need, and the question is, where's the political will? And that's something I can raise, and I'm raising it, and I'm here for exactly that reason. But I think one thing we really need is to find strategies to empower this message again. A bit of this power is lost, but we need it more than ever. And that's maybe if there are new strategies where we can be stronger again, that's something I would really like to see.
Thank you very much, Katrin.
So there was also a very good point about debt situation, because currently we are facing globally again a debt crisis. And even if we have a good come out of this COP in terms of a new climate finance goal, we still have a huge problem with debt. So it's very important that we find a way for a fair solution so that debt get cancelled, especially for low-income countries. And there, I think it's also a huge responsibility for us in the industrialized nation to fight exactly for that and to take responsibility. So the second thing is that right now, new fossil fuel projects are financed. And this is a huge problem, because if there is new fossil fuel infrastructure built yet, then it will be running in the next 15, 20 years. And so the climate crisis will worsen. It's very important that there will be no more financing in new fossil fuel project. So no new oil drilling, no new gas fields opened, no new coal mines opening. It just needs to end. And also the polluters have to pay for the climate crisis. Like in my region, as I mentioned, I come from coal region. And in my region, we have a huge energy company called RWE. They are responsible for the climate crisis, like also the other enormous big polluters like Total Energy or Shell. And still they are not paying the price for the climate crisis. So we truly need to implement in our countries measures so that truly the polluters pay. For example, the global climate damage tax. And in my country, very specific, because we have a mining law. And there we can implement some kind of tax for fossil fuels, for the extraction directly. And the effect would be also that, well, first there would be more money, and secondly, it's also more expenses for companies to push forward to use fossil fuels. So it has 2 good effects. And I think this is very important, and this we can achieve, especially in industrialized nation, very easily and very fast, and we should do that.
Thank you very much. And I hear the plea. I know your strengths as individual parliamentarians. Maybe if I can just quickly follow up with a question, particularly for Lena and Katrin. obviously, there are lots of different parties represented in Parliament, and particularly in order to get support for new taxations, that is different than the one that we currently have, which, for example, supports fossil fuel subsidies continued. And I just want to point out that Germany, for example, which is one of the countries who probably, if you look at a quote-unquote burden sharing versus the 100 billion goal, has done more than other developed countries, but still the money that Germany had put forward for climate finance is still overshadowed by the amount that it actually continues to spend every year for fossil fuel subsidies. So and I apologize, I know it is a hard question, but this is one of the questions: how do you build coalitions within Parliament? Across the political spectrum, including to get more people, more parliamentary support for the kind of responsibility, but also solidarity that is needed to generate additional funding for support of developing countries, and particularly the most affected countries. And back to either one of you.
Yeah, I can start. It's really a hard question, and I think especially because we have the most right-wing European Parliament ever. And what we're experiencing, and that's why being here is also again a sign to find hope somewhere, because in our committees we are experiencing that people from the far right are denying the human-made climate crisis still now, and many conservatives, and we have to say that, are working with them and trying to backtrack on the Green Deal, backtrack on green policies, and even support like delay of not just deforestation, but concrete things we already negotiated. So we see also in the mitigation process that conservatives and the far right are both trying to weaken the policies we need so deeply. And that's, of course, the same with finance. So there is just no commitment to find ways, because there are ways, to find these ways to create new funding for climate finance. And I think one thing we really need to do is to address, of course, all progressive parties to work together, and that's what we're doing, but at the same time really also not just target, but convince the Conservative Party that deciding now to be on the right side of history is important for them as well. Because it's also about their children, it's also about their beloved economy, and maybe it's a good time to understand it. So I think that's what we need to work on, and also point out where to backtrack. And I will make it concrete. When from Germany, Manfred Weber is telling we don't need a new climate target, then it's just wrong. And I think it's important to target people that are backtracking, because these are the people that are ruining not just climate finance, but the future for a whole generation and for this planet. And it's important to say their names, because otherwise they will not move.
Thank you. Katrin.
So very practical speaking, in the last years, so in Germany, the budget, the first version is written by the government, and then in the parliament we are in negotiation. And so the last years we always negotiated in the German parliament that we should shift the money from one title to another title, so always in the direction to climate and biodiversity. And so we were able to shift money, hundreds of millions, to the direction to climate justice. So this year, I don't know if you heard the news, in Germany we had a coalition crisis, and one party who wanted to stop investing in the climate, who wanted no more to do with climate, we kicked them out of the government. And right now we are in a situation that we are fighting for re-election, of course, and then next year there will be inside the German government and the parliament, there will be a huge question about how much money can we spend on climate. And so it will be very important that we will also build new alliance to have like this discussion in Germany. It's very important because also in Germany we have a huge fossil fuel lobby. Also inside the parliament, I can feel it every week. So it's truly important that we build new alliance globally and inside Germany with civil society, globally with the ones who are most affected by the climate crisis, so that we make sure in the next parliament, in the next government, that climate justice is the biggest topic. And also that we are shifting our money inside the budget in a direction to climate, and also that we need more money, so that we have to end subsidies for fossil fuels, that we have to create new taxes for the rich people and also especially for fossil fuel companies.
Thank you very much. And Lenora, if I can just follow up with a quick question for you. Obviously, there is strength in numbers, and AOC's, the Alliance of Small Island Developing States, is showing that very powerfully in the negotiations. How can the small island developing states, the least developed countries, how can they increase solidarity? Not just obviously among developed countries, but even within the G77 and China for their specific needs and priorities.
Well, it's funny you asked that, because we've been talking about COP31 over the last few days. And, if there is a Pacific COP, which is what the hosts would like it to be, I think it's a chance for the big emitters, the big polluters, the big countries, perhaps the right, the conservatives in your parliaments, for them to come and put their feet on our islands. I think the consensus is pretty clear amongst especially the Pacific SIDS, because we don't have anywhere else to go. As you know, the story from Tuvalu is that they've been offered land by Fiji. Their elders have said, no, we will die on our lands. So our commitment as Pacific SIDS in particular, and I hope that'll be the same for the whole of the group of IOSIS, is that we need to have you alongside us. We need you to understand our troubles, which is why I told that very personal story about how we in the islands bury the umbilical cords of our babies in the place where we wish for them to call home. But if their home is under the ocean, then it's a question of sovereignty, it's a question of our culture, it's a question of our traditions. So what we hope to do here is to really get you alongside, to invite you to come and see our home. Because I've heard some really amazing language, really, really good language. And, yesterday I was at the GGA until 6 p.m. And the first three gentlemen who spoke, I know don't come from the islands, but the language they use made them sound like they come from the islands. So what I'd really like to do personally is to invite them to our home. Invite them to our home so you'll see our realities. When we talk about more tax on airlines, more tax on airline fuel, we have a flagship Fiji Airways, which we're very proud of, which flies to many destinations, which brings in the much needed revenue that we need, not only in their own payback to government, but also in terms of tourism dollars. So we really need you to come to us, to our islands, put your feet in our sand, come and see the graveyards that used to be on dry land, but now only appear out of the ocean when it's low tide. And the German foreign minister, Miss Annalena Baerbock, she was in Fiji earlier this year, and there's an iconic photograph of her at low tide on a beach just outside our capital, Suva, standing near the graveyards that are only exposed during low tide. So these are the stories that we really need you to come and understand and touch and feel and sit on our mats and listen to our grandmothers tell you that our home used to be over there. Yeah. And now we've had to move up the hill to be able to survive. So in the context of us, the islands, and least developed states, we need you to come and live our realities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lenora, and that's really, really powerful. And I can say on a personal level, I had the pleasure to visit both Fiji and Samoa, and I can say as somebody that works on very technical issues. It's really important to see what remoteness, what barriers to access for many, many things, not just from finance means, to get an understanding that we are really not just talking about technical language, but the technical language and the choices that we make in that technical language are really the chance for global solidarity, empathy, which have to be at the core of whatever comes out here at COP29. I have to apologize for looking around. We are still hoping that we will have a speaker, the Honorable Livia Duarte from Brazil coming. But until she comes, I wanted to open it up to our audience here. And thank you so much for your interest and for being here. If I could see a show of hands who would like to ask a question. I have a gentleman here. Don't be shy. That's the beauty of having such a small pavilion, that we really can be close to each other and ask questions. But I'll start you off, sir. And if you could identify yourself, we would appreciate that.
Je peux parler français ou bien anglais? Bon, okay.
Anglais, s'il vous plaît.
In English, okay. Okay, Google Translate is here. I'm Abdallah Barkat from Djibouti, Member of Parliament, and also from Pan-African Parliament, Parliament of the continent. I'm also a member of Agricultural Committee. I'm also a member of Agricultural Committee, Rural Economy, Environment, and Natural Resource. I have to read that. Happy to see even some parliamentarians around the world participating in the COP. This is 29 COP. Beginning it was 1, 2, until 29 now. But what impact do we have, or can we have tomorrow on the negotiation conducted not by parliamentarian? The negotiation was conducted by minister who is representing state. Of state, how to ensure that our voice as representative of the people around the world, all even if the most vulnerable are the population who those adaptation capacity as weak. I'm saying the world is the same. The pollution emission of green gases in Russia or in other country in French, it impacts all of us, even in Africa and other country. And how to make parliamentarians come together to impact the negotiation, because now I'm coming from Pan-African Parliament, but I accredited from my country, not from Pan-African. MP don't have possibility to be accredited as MP. We don't have a pavilion. This is a very small one. We don't have. We have to have an impact with the negotiation. That's why maybe some experimented people can tell us how to push together to have an impact with negotiation.
Thank you very much, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to hear your experience. I would say if there are 1 or 2 more hands, I would take them and then respond. Is there anybody else who would want to ask a question? If not, we'll go while you're still thinking. Oh, was there one? Sorry, not seeing a hand. We'll go back with the respond, and I think it's what you're pointing out is really, really important. Also pointing out, of course, that being here at the COP is one part, but there is before COP and there is after COP, where parliamentarians in their respective countries and collectively through the strengthened voice of cooperation can and must play a role. But I would give it to maybe Lenore first, and then Katrin, and then
Merci beaucoup pour the question, Monsieur. An example I'd like to give you from Fiji is I'm a member of the government side, and our head of delegation is the Minister for Finance and also my party leader. In our government, we have 3 parties who form a coalition to have government and 1 party or now a collection of independents in the opposition. So what we have done as a government is invite the leader of opposition and 2 opposition members to be part of the Fiji government delegation. So it means that we are working collaboratively. So when we go back home, we all have heard the same things here. And it's very easy when you go back home to start fighting across the floor. But we trust that because of our need of collaboration back home, that bringing in members of the opposition from the Fiji government to COP as part of the greater Fiji delegation will help us in speaking the same language when it comes to negotiations, especially tomorrow and the next day and onwards. And as we work together as a very small country in building our nation that is relying on so many other greater countries, bigger and more developed countries, to help us with our sustainability.
So, Arthur, thank you for your question. No. I think that's a very good point, because we have to get better connected, especially we as members of the parliament, to learn from each other, because every time when I speak to other members of the parliament from different countries, I learn from them what they do for climate action, for mitigation, and I can try to apply that also on my country. So there's a huge learning effect. And secondly, it's very important to build alliance around the globe, so that we also can speak together, for example, against fossil fuel extractivism. And there is a specific group, parliamentarians against fossil fuels, who are working together globally on that topic. And I also think it's very important to protect each other also, because sometimes, especially also members of the parliament in regions where it's sometimes just not safe to be or to speak freely, it's very important there to protect each other. And in Germany, the German parliament has a program called Parliamentarian Protection, where we try to work together specific for members of the parliament who are threatened.
Thank you. Already much things have been said. I think one thing I try to achieve and I try to work on is especially a group for young parliamentarians across the globe to share their perspectives. And also I think it's important to have a fossil-free parliamentarian group, but I think also it's good, and that's what we're trying to achieve, and that's something that's still in progress, but get the opportunity to see the perspective from many young politicians around the globe and create something like we had a climate movement where over 100 countries were part of. We had demonstrations in over 150 countries at a point, and all these people, or many of these people, are also now getting in politics and getting engaged in systems and in party politics. And I think it's great to have this connection, and that's something I can work on. And if you have any contacts from young politicians from your area, it would be great to have them and to also add them to the group, because I think it would be good to have this exchange also.
Can I maybe... Oh, we have the Member of Parliament? Perfect. Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please join us. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we are very pleased that she was able to make it. I wanted to introduce Livia Duarte from Brazil, who will be speaking in Portuguese. We have her translator here. I'll give you the microphone in a second. Oh, perfect, even better. And just to basically reiterate, we started out with a quick introduction, showcasing that there is actually opportunity to raise additional public money in the global north through taxation, including for things like a climate damages tax or the wealth tax that was proposed by Brazil, including at the G20 context. So we are looking forward to hear your perspective first of all, what you're working on and what you think is possible to make polluters pay.
Maybe to make it easier and have the time, we can just switch for the moment. Oops.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry. We have the microphone. It's all good.
Bom dia, eu me chamo Lívia e sou a primeira deputada preta do meu estado, o Pará, no coração da Amazônia brasileira.
Good morning, my name is Livia. I'm the first black state deputy from my state, that is Pará, that is located in the heart of the Amazon.
É um prazer falar com os parlamentares da União Europeia, sobretudo em uma conjuntura em que nós precisamos pensar no papel dos países mais ricos de reparação à situação climática que o mundo vive.
It is an honor to be speaking with parliamentarians from the global north, especially on this urgent climate situation that we live, where the global north has to pay a historical debt from exploitation and pollution.
Nós vamos ter na minha cidade, Belém, e eu já dou as boas-vindas a vocês, a COP30 no ano que vem. E nós precisamos pensar em uma estratégia específica para que ela seja uma COP histórica.
Next year we'll be having COP30 in my hometown, Belém, and she wants to, in advance, welcome everyone to join us in Belém. But she also thinks that it's very important in this moment to think of tactical strategies on how we can make this COP30 historical in a sense of changing history.
Ela será histórica porque nós falamos no resto do mundo sobre a Amazônia. E vai ser a primeira vez que nós vamos falar da Amazônia para o mundo.
COP30, it will be historical because from this past few years, we've been talking about the Amazon from all around the globe, and this is the first time we'll be talking about the Amazon in the Amazon.
E a taxação dos super ricos é um caminho. O presidente Lula falou isso na última semana. Isso daria em torno de 2 bilhões de dólares por ano, o que é insuficiente de qualquer maneira.
Taxing the super rich, that is something that President Lula talked about on the past couple of days during the G20 reunion, is a way, but it's not enough. A data showed us that this will give us around $20 billion, but it's not enough.
Bem, nós estamos aqui para pensar caminhos juntos. Quanto tempo eu tenho? Posso falar mais?
How much time does she has?
Not much.
Not much.
Bom, eu imaginei que não tinha mais tempo, porque me perdi para chegar aqui. Mas queria saudar todos e dizer bem-vindos a Belém. Welcome to COP29, welcome to Belém no ano que vem.
She said that she imagines she don't have much time. She got lost on her way here, but she just wanted to say welcome everyone to Belém, welcome to COP29, and welcome to COP30.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to take you up on your offer, and I think it would be really great if there could be a parliamentarian collaboration starting right after COP29 and actually putting together parliamentary progressive forces on what can be done from parliamentarian side to actually push for the most progressive in Amazon COP that we can get.
Just a moment. Eu fico muito feliz que a gente possa fazer alguma colaboração entre parlamentares e nós temos um convite para vocês.
She said that she's very happy and looking forward for everyone to do a parliamentary coalition, and she has an invitation for all of us.
Nós vamos realizar, paralelamente à COP, o que eu quero que seja o maior encontro de parlamentares do mundo na Universidade Federal do Pará, a COP30.
Will be real.
Paralelamente.
We'll be doing alongside COP as a side event, COP30 in Belém, like as a side event, the biggest parliamentary encounter in the Amazon that will be hosted in the University of Pará, that is the biggest university in the north of Brazil, as an event to organize forces and parliamentarians from all around the world that debate climate justice.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, I think we are pretty much out of time. I just wanted to give all of you one last chance and opportunity to craft your 30 seconds to 1 minute maximum message to negotiators in general, but also in particular to the negotiator from your own country. And we start with Katrin and go this way and end with Livia. Just a second, Katrin. Please.
So at this COP, we need to deliver. We need to have a new climate finance goal, and so that we, in 1 year, we achieve not only that we find a solution at this COP, but that there is truly new money added, and that this money will be grants and not loans.
Great. Thank you. This is what we all want. Civil society wants that too. Just pointing that out. Please, Lenora.
For us in the in Pacific SIDS and other SIDS, what we don't need is more promises, more empty promises, more talk of big numbers followed by M's, B's, or T's. We need the money, and we needed it yesterday. So when we talk about the new goals, it has to be new money. It cannot be counted in as part of yesterday's promises or past COP's promises. This has to be new money because the biggest polluters are polluting so fast, we cannot keep up with the mitigation or adaptation. We need to look after our people. We haven't done any of the damage. The polluters must pay.
Thank you very much. Lena.
Thank you so much. And I think that's what we need to do right now. And for all of that, we need a lot of hope. We need so many people that are brave enough to speak up like you. And we need to do it right now. And we're discussing for it over years and years and years. And we're discussing about the climate crisis longer than I'm alive. And maybe it would be a good point now to keep these promises finally.
Thank you. And Livia.
Bom, eu sou da Amazônia. Eu espero que quando termine todo o discurso, alguém diga quantos milhões vai doar aos países menos desenvolvidos. Quantos milhões alguém vai doar para reparar o meio ambiente do sul global.
So I'm from the Amazon. So I really hope that after all this discussion and everything that it's been talked about here, people actually donate money. That the money that they all promise actually gets in the Amazon, so we can actually start reparation of a process that it's been happening for many, many years, and people at some point don't take accountability of.
Thank you very much for all your messages. And since we are streaming, we hope it will be heard, not just in the halls here, but around the world. And just reiterating the really, really core important role of parliamentarians as fighters within the countries to hold their own governments account, but also as a global unified world, a voice to hold actually the world to account and to represent the people, the impacted, the marginalized, the downtrodden, and make sure that as part of the process, equity and climate justice is served. And thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you.